In the maze of southeast London's winding streets, where shadows often hide more than they reveal, a single night would become a turning point that would shake the very foundations of British legal history. The year was 1972, a time when whispers could become evidence, and assumptions could destroy lives faster than the most raging fire. As sirens wailed and smoke billowed into the night sky, no one could have predicted the profound impact this single incident would have. A young life lost, three young souls caught in a nightmare, and a society about to be awakened to its own systemic flaws. Our story begins on a street where silence spoke volumes, where a single spark would ignite a fire of investigation that would burn through the very fabric of legal procedures. Welcome to the haunting tale of Maxwell Thomas Bertie, a story that will challenge everything you thought you knew about justice. Before the fateful night that would etch his name in legal history, Maxwell Thomas Bertie was a complex individual whose life was far from ordinary. Born in the beautiful archipelago of Seychelles in 1945, Maxwell arrived in a world that would prove both challenging and unforgiving. The early details of his childhood remain shrouded in mystery. What we know is that he was a young man who navigated life with a unique sense of identity that often set him apart from societal norms. Maxwell, known locally as Michel, was someone who understood the delicate art of existing between worlds, neither completely conforming nor completely rebellious. His journey from the tropical islands of Seychelles to the bustling streets of London was not a simple narrative of migration. It was a path marked by courage, survival, and an unwavering determination to live authentically. In an era when society was far less accepting of individuals who didn't fit into predetermined boxes, Maxwell carved out his own space. Friends would later describe him as vibrant, intelligent, and streetwise. He was known for carrying a handbag, a characteristic that earned him the local nickname Handbag among those who knew him. This wasn't just an accessory, it was a statement of his identity, a bold declaration of self in a world that often demanded conformity. By the time he settled in London, Maxwell had developed a network of connections that helped him navigate the complex urban landscape. He worked in various capacities, using his wit and charm to survive in a city that could be both exciting and unforgiving. His profession as a service worker allowed him to move through different social circles, always maintaining a sense of independence. The year 1970 marked a significant period in his life. It was then that he met Winston Good, a man who would become both a landlord and a significant figure in the complex narrative of his life. Their relationship was nuanced. They shared certain personal characteristics, including a mutual tendency to wear women's clothing, which created a unique bond between them. In February 1972, just months before the events that would change everything, Maxwell began renting a room in Good's house. This was more than just a typical landlord-tenant arrangement. It was a connection built on mutual understanding and shared experiences in a world that often misunderstood individuals like them. But then tragically, fate had other plans. The events of April 21st and 22nd, 1972, would become a turning point that would send shockwaves through the quiet streets of Catford. What began as an ordinary night would transform into a sequence of incidents that would challenge the very foundations of legal procedures. At precisely 1:21 a.m. on April 22nd, the first signs of trouble emerged. Fire brigade personnel were called to 27 Dogget Road, a modest house that would soon become the epicenter of a complex investigation. The flames licked the walls, creating an ominous backdrop to what was about to be discovered. When the firefighters arrived, they encountered a scene that was far more sinister than a simple house fire. As they worked to extinguish the blaze, one of the firefighters made a chilling discovery. Behind a locked door in the upstairs back bedroom, they found a body, Maxwell's body. The fire was quickly brought under control, extinguished by 1:31 a.m. Shortly after, at 1:45 a.m., the police arrived, followed by a forensic pathologist at 2 a.m. The next few hours would be crucial in piecing together the mysterious circumstances surrounding Maxwell's final moments. Initial observations revealed disturbing details. Maxwell's lips had turned a haunting shade of blue, and there were clear marks indicating he had been physically restrained. A lamp was discovered hidden in a cupboard under the stairs. and a cord was found in the dressing table drawer of the room where the body was found. The coroner's preliminary findings pointed to a tragic end. Asphyxiation had claimed Maxwell's life, but the exact timing of his passing remained a mystery. Some experts suggested it occurred on the evening of April 21st, while others maintained it could have happened after midnight. What made this case even more complex was the series of additional fires that would be discovered in the area. 2 days after Maxwell's body was found, on April 24th, multiple fires were reported. These included blazes near the railway line, in a small sports hut, and in a derelict house on the next street. These seemingly random fires would become a crucial piece of the puzzle. Little did anyone know that these incidents would lead to the arrest of 3 young individuals, Colin Lattimore, Ronnie Layton, and Amit Salah, who would become central to one of the most controversial legal cases in British history. The police investigation that followed Maxwell's death was anything but standard. What should have been a meticulous search for truth quickly became a rush to close the case, with devastating consequences for 3 young individuals who would become the prime suspects. 2 days after the discovery of Maxwell's body, the police apprehended Colin Lattimore, an 18-year-old young man. With him, they also arrested his friends Ronnie Layton, age 15, and Amit Salah, just 14 years old. The speed and manner of their arrest would later become a critical point of controversy. One of the most troubling aspects of the investigation was the interrogation process. Despite legal requirements that children should be interviewed in the presence of a parent, guardian, or independent adult, these young boys were questioned without any protective oversight. Each of them was subjected to intense questioning that would later be described as problematic. During these interrogations, all 3 youths admitted to starting the fire at the Doggett Roadhouse. More shockingly, Lattimore and Layton also confessed to Maxwell's physical harm. The boys would later claim they had been victims of police violence during these interviews, a serious allegation that would become a crucial point of contention. What made the case even more complex was the inconsistency of the evidence. The families of the 3 boys pointed out that each had solid alibis for the time frame when Maxwell was believed to have passed away. The pathologist, Professor James Cameron, even changed his initial testimony about the time of death, suggesting it could have been as late as 1 a.m. By April 25th, just 3 days after the incident, the police considered the case solved. The speed of their conclusion would later raise serious questions about the thoroughness of their investigation. On November 24, 1972, the verdicts came down. Lattimore was found guilty of physical harm on grounds of diminished responsibility and arson. He was sent to a medical facility. Layton received a life sentence for murder and arson, while Salah was sentenced for burglary and arson. What made this case particularly disturbing was the background of the accused. Lattimore, it was revealed, had severe learning difficulties and could neither read nor write. The other 2 were extremely young teenagers, vulnerable and easily manipulated. The case might have ended there. Another tragic footnote in the legal system, if not for the persistent efforts of the boys' families and some key individuals who refused to accept the verdict as final. Colin Lattimore's father became a relentless advocate, writing numerous letters to high-ranking officials, including the Queen, Prime Minister, and Home Secretary. His Member of Parliament, Carol Johnson, also began pushing for a review of the case. As 1973 progressed, the families of the accused continued their relentless pursuit of truth. When the Court of Appeal initially rejected their appeal on July 26, 1973, it seemed like hope was slipping away. But some key political changes were about to breathe new life into their fight. The general election of February 1974 brought 2 critical figures into the Home Office, Roy Jenkins and Alex Lyon. Both were committed to investigating potential miscarriages of justice. This political shift would prove crucial in reopening the case. Christopher Price, the new Member of Parliament for Lewisham, became another important ally. Having worked with Thames Television, he brought media attention and investigative depth to the case. The National Council for Civil Liberties also became involved, connecting with Professor Donald Teare, one of the country's leading pathologists. In November 1974, a pivotal 30-minute documentary was broadcast on ITV. Professor Teare presented evidence that dramatically challenged the original investigation's timeline, placing Maxwell's time of passing between 6:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. Another respected pathologist, Professor Keith Simpson, largely concurred with Thierry's findings. The Lord Chief Justice, Lord Widgery, began to see significant problems with the original investigation. By spring 1974, he believed the case deserved a fresh look. On June 18, 1975, Roy Jenkins made a groundbreaking announcement in Parliament. The case would be referred back to the appeal court. October 17, 1975, became a landmark date. The Court of Appeal threw out the convictions of all three young men. Lord Scarman's verdict was unequivocal. He declared the trio innocent and harshly criticized the police handling of the investigation. The Home Secretary ordered a further police inquiry into Maxwell's death. However, no new arrests were made, and the case remained officially unsolved. This opened the door for a comprehensive review of police procedures and suspect rights. Sir Henry "Harry" Fisher was appointed to lead an inquiry that would go beyond just this case. His mission was to examine how police treated suspects, especially children and those with learning difficulties. Fisher's approach was unique. He was authorized to make findings based on the balance of probabilities rather than criminal standards of proof. The Fisher inquiry would become a watershed moment. While rejecting the boys' claims of police brutality, Fisher highlighted significant procedural issues. He noted that the police had essentially closed down the investigation after obtaining the initial confessions. Most importantly, the case exposed critical flaws in the British legal system. It revealed how vulnerable individuals could be manipulated, how assumptions could replace evidence, and how the rights of suspects, especially young and marginalized individuals, could be trampled. The Royal Commission on Criminal Procedure, established between 1979 and 1981, was a direct result of this case and similar investigations. Over 50 full meetings were held, meticulously examining the powers and duties of police, the rights of suspects, and the prosecution of criminal offenses. In 1981, Patrick Mayhew articulated the critical need for reform in the House of Commons. He highlighted how the existing system hampered both police and suspects, creating an environment of legal ambiguity that served neither justice nor individual protection. The most significant legislative outcomes were the Police and Criminal Evidence Act of 1984 and the Prosecution of Offenses Act of 1985. These landmark pieces of legislation introduced crucial safeguards for individuals during criminal investigations. The Crown Prosecution Service was established, creating a more transparent and accountable system of legal prosecution. One of the most groundbreaking changes was the introduction of the appropriate adult system. This meant that vulnerable individuals, particularly children and those with learning difficulties, would now have independent representation during police interviews. No longer could young or vulnerable suspects be interrogated without proper support and protection. The alternative suspect theory added another layer of complexity to the case. In 1980, Detective Chief Superintendent E.J. George and Inspector E. Ellison presented a report identifying Douglas Franklin as a potential perpetrator. Paul Pooley, who claimed to have witnessed the incident, stated that Franklin had previously been Confait's lover-protector while they were both in prison. Tragically, shortly after being interviewed, Franklin took his own life. The Attorney General, Michael Havers, declined to prosecute, citing the potential for mutual incrimination. Forensic experts like Professors Alan Usher and Keith Mant provided crucial insights, suggesting that Confait had actually been deceased for over 48 hours before being discovered, a detail that completely undermined the original investigation's timeline. Also, Winston Good, Maxwell's landlord and a key figure in the early stages of the investigation, met a tragic end. In May 1974, he took his own life by swallowing cyanide, adding another layer of complexity to an already intricate narrative. His mental state in the days following Maxwell's death suggested the profound psychological impact of the events. The forensic community continued to debate the specifics of the case. Renowned pathologists like Professors Donald Tier and Keith Simpson had provided conflicting timelines, highlighting the challenges of forensic investigation in the early 1970s. The uncertainty around the exact time and circumstances of Maxwell's death remained a haunting element of the narrative. By 1980, Sir Michael Havers prepared a statement declaring the three young men innocent. When he consulted Sir Henry Fisher, the inquiry's original leader, Fisher surprisingly refused to fully exonerate them, a decision that would continue to spark debate among legal experts. Louis Blum Cooper, who had represented the three young men, would later reflect on the case's complexity. After Fisher's death in 2005, he wrote to The Independent, suggesting that Fisher had implicitly acknowledged the limitations of his original findings. Years later, the story continues to resonate as a reminder of the importance of due process, careful investigation, and human dignity. Maxwell's life and death became a catalyst for significant legal and social reforms that would protect countless individuals in the decades to come. In the quiet streets of Catford, in the corridors of legal institutions, and in the memories of those touched by this extraordinary case, Maxwell Thomas Bertie's legacy lived on, a testament to the ongoing pursuit of true justice. All right, guys, before you dash off into the night, don't forget to hit that like button. It lets us know you're digging the content, and that keeps the creepy cases coming your way. While you're at it, smash that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. You don't want to miss our next dive into the mysterious unknown. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you on the flip side for another mind-blowing case. Until then, stay curious.